A couple of people brought up, seemed like a potential evolution of ethics throughout history, like social justice in our past couple centuries, and cultural differences in moral standards seems to point to maybe a lack of objective morality. How would you respond to that?
My response, well, that's actually two questions. So the first question is that we have morality that has been evolving. Mm-hmm. If there is no objective standard, what is it evolving toward? If I'm somebody who's a bowler and I keep throwing this ball at these pins every day, if I don't know that the standard is 300 for a bowling game, 12 strikes in a row, then I'm not getting better or worse. I'm just moving that number higher or lower. It's not moving toward any kind of goal. So the very fact that somebody would say that there has been a moral evolution, which I would agree, for example, with children's working rights, slavery, women's rights, and so forth, but that actually proves that there's a standard. Otherwise, we're not saying that we're making progress, we're just making change, and so forth. Mm-hmm. The second question, remind me of it again, what was it? The
cultural relativism.
Oh, yeah, okay. In different cultures, they have different moral standards. Okay, there's two ways to answer this. The first way would be to say that in different cultures, it could be the case that they are less moral or more moral than others. And I think that's perfectly fine. I think we would agree on the personal level that individuals could be more moral or less moral than others, like an Adolf Hitler or a philanthropist of some kind. So why wouldn't that be the case with regard to cultures, entire cultures of people? Now, in a biblical worldview, this would make perfect sense because we could see that bad ideas, bad views would have bad consequences. And so no one would argue that we couldn't learn moral knowledge the way we do any other way, the way that we learn mathematics or we learn history or syntax and grammar. A lot of morality is taught, and if it's poorly taught and moral reasoning isn't taught, it's going to have consequences. Another way of answering it is to point out the work of C.S. Lewis and the Abolition of Man, James Rachels, of all people, the one who says that we should use the people as laboratory food and, laboratory food and, what was it? Laboratory experiments, that's what I said, yeah. Laboratory experiments. James Rachels has a whole section in his book of 110 moral virtues that are held across anthropology. And so he says that actually the differences aren't as much as you would think. It's usually on the periphery, not at the core. Things like taking care of children, truth-telling, things like that, where you can start to discover that we do have a lot more in common than you might think. And he's coming from an atheistic perspective, so it isn't as though a Christian is trying to say that.
And that the differences are peripheral rather than central.
Yeah, I mean, let me give you an example. We could both agree on a moral value, but we could disagree on the expression of that value. So how did Hitler convince Nazi Germany to kill 6 million Jews and homosexuals and gypsies and Catholics and everyone else? How did he convince them to do that? He convinced them by saying, these people aren't human. Human persons have value, but the Nazis had a famous line, a life unworthy of life, where they had certain persons, the mentally handicapped, the sick, where he convinced them that because these aren't human persons, we shouldn't kill them. Now, would even Hitler, the most moral extreme that you could have, would even he admit that killing a German soldier in an unjustified way is immoral? Yes, he would. So the moral value, even in an extreme case, I know that's extreme, but even in an extreme case, the moral value could be the same, but the expression of that value could be different. Because what we're doing is changing the science and changing what a human person is. Does that make sense? Okay.